Our final storyteller of the first half, when I said, tell us about a time you had to calm yourself down, he said, my team and I had just finished loading 30,000 pounds of produce into a semi, and then we realized it was the wrong semi. Please welcome to the stage, Zeb Baccelli.
I sat in the very front row of my first college class. It was in this room that looked more like a hotel conference room with beige walls and pastel blue floor. But I was excited to be there to see what a Catholic university had to tell me about the Bible. You see, in my senior high school yearbook, next to the photo of me with my long hair and wispy teenage beard, the fake smile and fake tuxedo jacket, under future plans I had put, to understand the universe or die trying. I was not a humble kid. I was very intense and very nerdy. I was really into physics as the fundamental science behind reality. And I was really into Catholicism as the fundamental religious truth. My family was only really sort of half-heartedly Catholic, but early on I decided, if I'm going to be part of this, I'm going to go full throttle with it. I became the most hardcore Catholic I knew. I decided I needed to read the Bible for myself, and I threw myself into the prayers and practices of the church. I thought that I could combine the theology and the science into a grand scheme of total understanding. And through high school, I debated whether I should pursue this by becoming a physicist or a priest. I'd grown up hearing that the Catholic Church desperately needs more priests, and that I should become one since I'm so devout. Being a physicist sounded like more fun to me, but I thought I should take the higher path and offer myself in service to God and the Church. So I applied to St. Mark's Seminary in Erie, Pennsylvania. To my immense surprise, they rejected me just 2 weeks before class was supposed to start. I knew they were making a huge mistake and that they would realize it soon, so I thought I'll just go to Gannon, the college associated with the seminary, as a regular student, and they'll let me in eventually. So in that beige and pastel classroom, I was there for an Introduction to Sacred Scriptures. It was a class that was a requirement for every freshman there. Most of the kids just sat through it as a boring requirement, but I was really eager to incorporate this new knowledge into my grand scheme of total understanding. The class was taught by a priest, Father Scott, but the material came from a more secular, historical perspective. I came into the class thinking, the Catholic Church says the Bible's the Word of God, so I have to believe it word for word in its literal sense. But Father Scott taught us that the Bible is really a mishmash of myth and fiction and garbled history, put together over centuries by different authors with different political and religious agendas. Once I realized what Father Scott was up to, I shifted from eager to learn to eager to debate. I spent all class picking apart the things he was telling us, both in my mind and out in the open. A typical exchange would be something like Father Scott would say, the story of Noah and the Ark is actually based on the Epic of Gilgamesh and was written not by Moses, but by the priests of Judea centuries later. I'd raise my hand and say, how do you know that's true? He would say, well, it's based on linguistic analysis and archaeological evidence. And I would say, oh, so you don't know. It's just a theory, right? He would say, yeah, it's the best theory we have. And I would leave feeling vindicated that I've proven that there was no need to believe what he was teaching us. But one day in October, as I was leaving the class, I thought, it's true that Father Scott can't prove his theories, but what proof do I have for my own beliefs? I stopped on the sidewalk with students rushing all around me. I could feel my faith evaporating inside me. I thought, if I can't prove the Bible's true, then I shouldn't believe it. And if the Bible's not true, that means the Catholic Church isn't true. My whole identity and my whole life plan was crumbling with my faith. I realized I'm obviously not going to become a priest, and I don't see any way to pursue my goal of understanding the universe now. So I just dropped out of college. I moved back home and I got a part-time job. And I spent all my free time reading from different religious and philosophical traditions, taking long walks, and praying. Because although I didn't believe in Christianity anymore, I still believed that there was some God behind it all, even if I didn't know anything about him. But as the months went on, I just felt more and more hopeless. I couldn't stand living in this total uncertainty and futility. It came to the point where I really just wanted to be done with everything. I couldn't stand living this way. I could only think of one option left, there was this verse in the Bible that had long haunted me where Jesus tells somebody, "Give everything you have to the poor and come follow me." I didn't believe in Jesus anymore, but I thought I could still follow the spirit of this. And so I did. I gave everything I had to the local Salvation Army, and everything I had that was not worth anything, like even my driver's license and stuff, I just threw in a dumpster. I told my family and friends, I'm leaving, and I don't plan to come back, and I won't be keeping in touch. So the day came in July, and I woke up at 6 in the morning. I ate a big bowl of Raisin Bran, and I walked out the door with nothing but my clothes and $5 in change in my pocket. I had told everyone that I was going to go to this monastery down in Kentucky where a writer I like had once lived and ask the monks there if they could answer any of my questions. I didn't think I'd ever actually get there, but I just needed some direction to head in to begin with. That first day, I actually got way further than I ever thought possible, to Latrobe, Pennsylvania. I happened to know that there was a monastery there, and so I thought I'd walk over there and see what they had to say. I found this priest in the parking lot, and I asked if I could talk to him. He took me to his office, and I asked him, "How do you know for sure that Catholicism is true?" He said, "Well, you can't know for sure. You just have to have faith." I was really disappointed in that. I thought, they've had 2,000 years to come up with some tips and tricks. They haven't figured this out yet? But he had nothing else to offer, so he put me up for the night. And the next day, I just walked again. I walked for about 12 hours. And that night, I got to Uniontown. And around sunset, I walked off the highway, and I saw this big estate there. And on the gate, it said Mount St. Macrina. This was another monastery, and this one was for Catholic women. I'd never heard of it before, but it looked like a nice place, and the gate was open. So I walked up the driveway. There was a nun sweeping the porch of the big house there, and I asked her if there was any place I could just lie down for the night. And she asked me to come in and wait there while she went to talk to a superior. I went into the chapel and prayed, and I said, "It's really weird that I've ended up at Catholic monasteries my 2 first nights. But don't worry, that's not going to lure me back to the church. They're going to need to prove it before I'll come back." The nun came back, and she said I could stay there for the night. And the next day, the third day, walking under the hot sun really wore me down physically and emotionally. I felt so stupid for having got myself into this situation. So to try to keep myself moving forward, I started repeating some phrases that I'd picked up from books I'd read about Buddhism and Taoism, just a kind of little improvised mantra I came up with. But after a little while, it just felt really phony, like, I've got no connection to these traditions. What am I doing trying to use them? In my frustration, I just stopped and yelled out to the empty highway, "Come on, what is real then?" And I just stood still and listened. My mind went silent, and I waited, ready for anything. I could feel the hot sun on my skin. I could hear the insects buzzing in the grass around me. And there came this silent response: Jesus is real. People ask me what it's like to hear God speak to you, and I didn't hear anything. It was not that I heard something. It was more like the feeling you have after having heard something. And when I quieted the chatter of my mind, I just found this reassurance given to me that this person, Jesus, is real. And that was it, no further information. I didn't know if that meant that the Bible was true. I didn't know if that meant that any certain religion was true. I didn't feel called to come back to the church or anything. It was very minimal, but I couldn't deny that I had received a response from a voice that I trusted. And I felt emotion well up in my chest at the closeness of God. I felt the weight of anxiety lift from my body, and I felt peace that answers would come when I really need them. After that, I walked for 4 more days, and everything was completely different. I didn't feel lost and alienated anymore. I felt at home in the world, and I saw beauty everywhere around me, from gas stations to the forest. I was able to connect with the people I ran into at truck stops and homeless shelters, wherever I ended up. And I finally got to that monastery in Kentucky around noon on a Sunday. The place was busy with people coming in and out of church and visiting the gift shop. I walked up to the reception desk and to the monk there, and I said, "I've walked here from Pennsylvania. I gave away everything I own, and I've come seeking wisdom." The monk said, "Yes, we know. Your mother called ahead." he said, "You can't just join a monastery like this." And I was really annoyed that my mom had ruined the dramatic entrance I had planned. And I was kind of annoyed that the monk thought I wanted to join the monastery when I didn't even believe that Catholicism was true. But he let me stay. And I spent a week there, working and praying with the monks and having long talks with them. And although the doctrines of Catholicism had come to feel really alien and bizarre to me, somewhere in that week I felt that same internal voice call me back to the church. And it didn't give me any kind of justification or explanation, nothing I could use in an argument. It was just kind of given to me as like, this is the next step of your journey. And so I took it. I scheduled confession with one of the monks. I met with him face-to-face in his book-lined office. And he said, "Tell me your sins." I thought, well, on this walk, I've probably stopped for water more often than I needed to. So, gluttony, I suppose. The monk looked at me and said, "Gluttony? You're too skinny to be a glutton. Come on. Tell me, have you missed church since your last confession?" I didn't think that that was really a sin because I didn't even believe in Catholicism at the time. But I said that I had, and he accepted that and gave me absolution. And so like that, I was a Catholic in good standing again. After a week at the monastery, I really wanted to go back out on the road to the joy and peace and freedom that I'd found there. But I felt guilty about relying on the kindness of strangers all the time and about leaving my family worried about where I was and what was happening to me. So I accepted an offer from the monks to buy me a Greyhound ticket back to my hometown of DuBois. So I came home with my tail kind of between my legs. After my dramatic departure, I was back in only 2 weeks. But I was so much happier. I was able to be in the moment and to find that voice, that guiding voice that I found on the road whenever I needed it. And I could connect to people and hear their experiences and listen to them without feeling the need to argue about what's true and false. And so I've never achieved that high school mission to understand the universe or die trying. And honestly, I haven't been able to stay really in that mode of life that I found on the road of total freedom and presence in the moment. But I've realized that the journey to truth is really personal, and I can't say to anybody where that voice is guiding them. I know that now that the truth that matters to me most is not intellectual understanding. It's following that deepest voice that's inside me and having the courage to follow me wherever it leads me. Thank you.
Zeb Baccelli.